Okay, Gold Derby fans, it is our Emmy predictions slugfest for 2018. We're going to talk about best drama series, what's coming back, what new shows could possibly take an open slot. I'm Marcus James Dixon. I'm here with Chris Beachum, Daniel Montgomery, Joyce Eng, and Paul Sheehan. And first of all, last year's nominees were The Handmaid's Tale, which actually won for Hulu. And you had Stranger Things, you had This Is Us, you had The Crown, you had Westworld. The Americans got in 2 years ago, that could come back. Homeland won back in 2012, that could come back. But there's a ton of new shows that are trying to get in. Also, Game of Thrones won 2 years in a row. That's back this year. Of all the new shows, Paul, I'm predicting Ozark from Netflix to get in. I have it down in my 7th slot. I'm not 100% confident, but what about you? Do you think the show could get in?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely think it's good. Ozark, it's got that the pedigree. It's on Netflix, which has done so well. It's interesting, Marcus, when you sort of ran through that list of last year, how many freshman shows were in contention last year. And I think given the Emmy history, TV voters love repeats. So I think a lot of those freshman shows are now in their sophomore year and they'll come back. So, and then like you mentioned, the Game of Thrones, especially fighting it out. So there may not be so many slots, but I really think Ozark is one of the strongest ones, along with, I would say, The Good Doctor. Those are my two that I've got being nominated.
And there's two shows that aren't coming back, House of Cards and Better Call Saul. Those shows are kind of taking the year off. They'll be back in the fall, I believe. So as far as, open slots go, there's two slots there that new shows are really hoping to get.
What about you, Chris? You're the one that knows this inside and out because you spend months setting up the prediction center. So you know every single new show that's on has been on or will be on.
Emmys love repeats. We always talk about that. And last year on drama series, they brought in 5 new shows, 5 rookie shows to fill, out of the 7 slots. So that's not going to happen again. I mean, that's a rarity. There were a lot of very highly acclaimed shows last year that they were trying to make room for. Game of Thrones was gone. So I mean, it was a accumulation of everything happening at once. I've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I've got all 5 of those shows that came in fresh last year as all coming back.
So do I.
Handmaids, This Is Us, Westworld, Stranger Things, The Crown. The ones we've seen had great seasons, Stranger Things and The Crown. Handmaids is coming up. Game of Thrones we've seen. That was last summer's episodes. And This Is Us, we've seen. It ends tonight. So Westworld is the only one. Westworld and Handmaid's Tale we have not seen yet. I've got the Americans in the 7th slot, just thinking a final season allows the producers to have a barn burner of a season. They can kill off anybody that they want. They've obviously, hopefully, they've had a plan in place to get to wherever they're headed. So I think that is the most likely. But I could list off some shows that really have my attention if you would like. We're out meeting with all the networks now, so we're hearing what their big pushes are. I'll just mention some of these, and then anybody can talk about the ones they want. We just met with Showtime yesterday. They're very high on, is it Shy? Is that how you say it, The Shy? Mm-hmm. You mentioned The Good Doctor. You mentioned Ozark. The Good Fight. Really didn't have a much of a fighting chance last year, debuting for the first time on CBS All Access. Now that they've had a year under their belt, maybe that will make a difference. Rise is getting a big push. 911 is getting a big...
That's NBC's kind of version of Glee, right? Rise? I mean,
right. And I wonder if that might be a musical when we get over to the Golden Globes, but there's no musical category at the Emmys. 911 is getting a big push. Counterpart with J.K. Simmons is on Stars. Trust on FX, the J. Paul Getty show. So Mafia is getting a big push from AMC. We got a massive box yesterday at the office regarding McMafia. So that's some of the ones that are brand new that should be considered.
So Joyce, you were at TV Guide. before you joined us here at Gold Derby. So what, of those ones that Chris rhymed off, all those different ones, is there one or two of them that pop for you?
No, I think in terms of new shows, I could see Mindhunter getting in. I think a lot of us were predicting it at the Globes, but it did really well, like critically and, well, I can't say commercially since we don't know ratings, but fans really loved it last year as Jonathan Groff. I could see that.
Sorry, it's a Netflix show about an FBI profiler, right?
Yes. So I could see that breaking drama series. Most of the new programs, I feel like they're more of a play for actors, like Ozark with like Jason Bateman and Laura Linney, than for series. Like, I think drama series, we're going to see repeat offenders. Like, I agree with Chris. I don't think it's going to be like 5 new shows again. I think it's going to be returning shows like those 5, Game of Thrones, and probably Americans, if I had to guess right now. So I feel like yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, just to follow up on Mindhunter, I think also it has the David Fincher factor. He won for directing House of Cards. He was a producer on that. House of Cards isn't coming back in time for this Emmy cycle, so it could get some of those fans in. I think Fincher's got a really good shot at a nomination and maybe even another win for directing, regardless of how the show does for Best Drama Series. But yeah, that's another one. I don't have it in my 7, but it'd probably be my 8th or 9th.
And then, it's so interesting. I mean, Chris and I go way back in terms of Emmys. I mean, at one point they gave an Emmy for Best New Series. And, it just seems like if they're not going to do that, and I could see why then there'd be the argument, well, then you marginalize and they probably don't get to compete for the regular. But gosh, I mean, they really should have 10 nominees. I mean, there's
I agree.
Much.
Yeah.
I mean, when you've got the likes of The Deuce that we haven't mentioned, that HBO period drama from the 70s.
But it has James Franco.
Well, okay, but I'm just saying that
they can nominate the show and
they'll nominate Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
And then there's Mr. Mercedes from Audience Network. Audience Network does a huge push every year, and they really haven't broken out yet. So one day they will. I wonder if it's this year for Mr. Mercedes.
Yeah, I mean, look how quickly Hulu ramped up. Really, I mean, the Handmaid's Tale for a streaming series to win drama. There's certainly potential, but it's Chris, what you mentioned about going to sort of talk to networks is one thing to find out what their push is, and then, like you said, you get these big boxes like McMafia, which is a co-production with the BBC and AMC, which had a lot of success with The Night Manager as a limited series. So now McMafia, even though they've only done 1 season, they've said it's a drama series. They're expecting.
Well, I don't know. They didn't tell me the reasons, but the other things that are new for them this year, and they don't have Better Call Saul, are definitely limited series. So I'm thinking they wanted to spread out just a little bit. Maybe behind the scenes they've already approved McMafia for a 2nd season. We don't know.
Well, and the same thing with Trust, right? Now you had Danny Boyle and Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott made the film. Now Danny Boyle's made a TV version of the same thing, the J. Paul Getty kidnapping in the early 70s. But you found out with Trust that it's more expansive than that. It's not just going to look at that one time in the life of that family.
Right. We did find that out. We originally had it in limited series, and then they told us, no, it's going to be a drama series, which I will say on the other side of that, if you're looking for The Alienist here on the drama list in our prediction center, that is a limited series. If you're looking for The Sinner on USA, that is a limited series, even though they just announced that Bill Pullman's character will be in a 2nd cycle of that, however you want to call it. And if you're looking for Twin Peaks, that's a limited series. Now, all of these, that's what the network is requesting. I think final decisions are made by the Academy in April. So we just have to go on what we know at the moment, and then if something changes, we'll change it.
What about Mrs. Maisel? Isn't there what's the Academy's rule about 30 minutes versus 60 minutes?
If you're 30, you're assumed to be a comedy if you're 30 and a drama if you're 60, unless you appeal like Shameless did. And if they approve the appeal, then you get to go on the other side. The only 30-minute show that has even ever appealed since the system has been in place the last 2 or 3 years was the that show Z last year about Zelda Fitzgerald. There have been several shows that have tried the appeal on the going from an hour to comedy, and the only one to be denied the appeal was Orange is the New Black, which started out as a comedy.
I call it the Orange is the New Black rule.
I was going to say the same thing.
They accepted like Glee, like Jane the Virgin, like all these other hour-long
everything
dramedy.
Yeah, literally every other show that appealed.
Like they just wanted to punish Orange.
Well, Marvelous has been a comedy everywhere at all the guilds, so I don't think the Academy is going to deny them. Not anything that we've heard so far would indicate that.
Well,
we also heard, I never really had heard this officially. We wondered yesterday at a lunch we were at, do you appeal every year? Does Shameless have to go in every year, show an episode and make the appeal? And they said, no, once they've decided it, as long as you're happy where you are, then you don't have to appeal it anymore.
So now that we have Game of Thrones battling Handmaid's Tale, those are the past 2 winners. What do you guys think is going to happen in terms of winners? I know we don't even know the nominees yet, but this is going to be quite an exciting race.
Because I think you don't discount some of these new shows, and also something like This Is Us that, really won. I think we were all surprised when it won at SAG. I don't know about everyone else. I mean, I think a lot of us were predicting Stranger Things was going to win last year, not Handmaid's Tale.
And season 2 was better than season 1 of Stranger Things. Yeah. I know that's a lot of people disagree with me, but I'm confident it's better.
Season 2 of Handmaid's Tale can be better than season 1.
And then HBO knows how to win Emmys. I mean, it's certainly having Westworld come out season 2 closer to the time of voting. I mean, that could
remember really too on Westworld, because of Game of Thrones' absence, Handmaid's was not your overall leader last year among drama series on nominations. It was Westworld picking up the slack from Game of Thrones. So it's going to be interesting to me to see. They're both high production values, lots of things going on. Which of those two will have more Emmy nominations, Game of Thrones or Westworld? It's probably going to be one or the other.
And what's interesting is that this will be the first time for Game of Thrones where it's not competing on a year when it aired during the spring. So instead of it following like the season airs, all the hoopla, and then Emmy voting is right there. It's been waiting several months to try and get into this Emmy cycle, and it's not going to have its next season airing until I think 2019. So it's not going to have new episodes airing during voting to keep voters aware of it, which is going to be interesting to see if that changes the dynamic at all.
It needs to pull a Breaking Bad and win literally a year after it last aired.
Yeah, which is tough. And Breaking Bad had that historic final season, that final run of 7 to 8 episodes that was just, everyone was talking about those. They were talking about those for a year.
But don't you think that Breaking Bad, where Breaking Bad really got onto people's radars beyond Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul, was because it started to stream and people caught up with it, and then that built in the excitement for those last couple of seasons. And because of shows like Westworld and Game of Thrones only live in the HBO universe, it's different. You have to go to HBO to get it and see it. You don't have any other options. So.
And Game of Thrones has always been big. Like, it can't get any bigger. Whereas Breaking Bad, it was a gradual growth in terms of popularity and popular zeitgeist over it.
Handmaid's Tale will be airing during voting, even though it's a streaming show. It airs once a week, which is very smart because you keep that buzz up. Also, Westworld will be airing during voting. So maybe you guys are right. Maybe Game of Thrones will be, kind of forgotten because it would have been a year since it aired by the time voting starts.
And I feel like they can also think they could, wait to award Game of Thrones for their last season. Like, they might not feel compelled to give them another one this year for their penultimate season.
Just wait for Game of Thrones: The Return of the King.
And that one will follow their normal pattern. That those 2019 episodes will air in the spring, leading right into voting for their final time. as will Veep.
Right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Go and make your predictions at Gold Derby. You can predict how many categories, Chris? We're doing all the
16 right now. We'll keep adding more on.
Right. We're going to add reality. We're going to add variety, and the guest categories are coming later. So go make your predictions. Beat us editors at Gold Derby.